We the people of the United States form a more perfect union, establish justice, domestic tranquility, and ensure liberty and justice for all. These are the words of our founding fathers that represent the principles upon which the United States was founded. Though our past is short, America has evolved and matured into a country of democracy, equality, and a land of opportunity. However, the struggle for true, just equality has been fought since Independence Day and is still being fought today. On January 22, 1973, the Supreme Court of the United States of America made a landmark decision that still remains controversial, the right to abortion. Though adopted 40 years ago, the Roe v. Wade decision that legalized women's right to an abortion still remains a highly debated topic that has divided our country in two. To understand this decision's significance, one must understand its past, evolution, and long-lasting effects on America. The first documented abortion occurred in Egypt in 1550 BC and was actually common practice at that time. All over the world since the beginning of time, women everywhere took part in abortions, whether through medical practice or home remedies. In fact, it wasn't until 1821, when Connecticut passed the first law banning abortions, that the subject had even been breached. By 1860, 20 states had similar laws, and soon the whole country made abortions illegal unless it was to save the mother's life. Abortions were blotted out by the legal system, and strict laws enforced consequences to anyone providing an abortion or seeking one. Such paranoia over abortions caused the Comstock Act of 1873, which banned any obscene or lewd materials or information to be circulated through mail even for educational purposes. This was intentionally designed to keep women in the dark, which instead of slowing the rate of abortions, only caused more drastic and harmful measures. Abortions also became a social issue, as it became a cultural scandal and ethical break. However, despite the legal and social pressures, women, as they had always done, sought out abortions by whatever means necessary. Women of upper-class families could afford safe medical counsel, but most resorted to self-induced methods that were harmful and dangerous. 1 out of 4 home abortions resulted in damaging diseases or death in 1952. Women everywhere put themselves at risk by trusting uneducated abortionists who often had little training or were solely in the business for personal profit. Even those who could afford doctors often faced unsanitary clinics and often contracted diseases. Another huge barrier to abortion rights was religion. Christianity, the largest sect of religion in America, discriminated and banned abortions under all circumstances. The same sentiment is still felt and supported today by radical Christian groups and some practicing members. The sixth commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," also translated "Thou shalt not murder," was often used as a defense against abortions. Regardless, many Christians, Muslims, Jews, and others sought out abortions despite their faith. Perhaps the most substantial aspect to abortions before Roe v. Wade is the role women played in society. Women gained suffrage in 1920 and were still slowly making progress when abortion became a hot topic of debate. Because women at this point held very little political sway, laws, in particular those concerning abortion, were made solely by males, whom, as we know, will never need to make the decision of having an abortion. With that in mind, many male politics at the time couldn't comprehend why abortion rights were so important. During the time of Roe, women were still expected to be housewives, wives, mothers, and homemakers, and therefore abortions would seem contradictory to such societal ideals. In the 1950s, for example, most women were secretaries or nurses with low-paying jobs where they were often subjected to sexual harassment and belittling environments. Roe v. Wade came into public light when Norma McCorvey, at the time 21, claimed a case against the state of Texas on behalf of all women for the right of an abortion. Norma McCorvey was born in 1947 and was raised in Houston, Texas as a Jehovah's Witness. McCorvey's father left the family when she was 13 years old, and her parents subsequently got divorced. She and her brother were raised by her mother, a raging alcoholic. Norma McCorvey dropped out of high school when she was 14 and spent the next 7 years in and out of trouble, pregnancies, and poverty. By the time she was 21, she had one daughter, Melissa, and another child whom she had given up for adoption. After failing to secure an abortion for her third pregnancy, she was referred to Linda Coffey and Sarah Weddington, 2 ambitious lawyers who had been fighting similar cases for years. By the time the case reached the Supreme Court in 1973, McCorvey had already given birth but decided to continue on in the name of all females. Her defense was under the Bill of Rights, a woman has the right to terminate her pregnancy. It is improper for a state to deny individual, marital, personal, and sexual privacy. The Constitution has never claimed a fetus to be a living person, so therefore it cannot be said to have any legal right to life. McCorvey dubbed Jane Roe, prosecuted Henry Wade, Texas Attorney General, who defended Texan law. Like other anti-abortionists, he believed the state has a duty to protect prenatal life. Life starts at the moment of conception, so therefore, though unborn, a fetus has the right to protection. After 3 painstaking years, Justice Harry Blackmun announced that women have the right to abortion under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution and other supporting clauses. However, the Supreme Justices set up regulations that balance the state's interest in maintaining future life while also upholding basic rights. This, roughly translated, meant that a woman could obtain an abortion within the first trimester with no interference from the state, some interference during the second trimester, and absolute restriction in the third trimester unless it was to save her life. Many positive things came out of this decision that has forever shaped the face of America and the world. Perhaps the most significant is the realm of healthcare. After the legalization of abortions, medical attention, knowledge, and profession boomed. Almost overnight, death rates dropped to a normal 0, as clinics could now be safe and clean with no fear of vandalism or prosecution. Organizations and groups specializing in women healthcare became a useful and supportive resource to women everywhere. Planned Parenthood, for example, offers an abundant source of information and services ranging from birth control prescriptions to medical procedures. Doctors, too, benefited from legalization because they now were protected by the Constitution to practice and share their knowledge and skill. Women's role in society also benefited from Roe v. Wade. After this landmark decision, women had better chances to education and a professional life, which finally quenched a long thirst for self-dignity and worth. As more women started working due to the lessened burden of motherhood, new businesses and industries boomed. However, as with any landmark decisions, Roe v. Wade met tremendous opposition, which it still fights today. Abortion is one of the most controversial topics debated not only in our society but around the world. Though decided upon 40 years ago, Roe is under ceaseless scrutiny and insult. Republicans and Democrats, libertarians and socialists alike debate the morality, legality, and ethical fiber of abortions in our country. Opposition manifested itself into action as the controversy grew. In 1976, the Hyde Amendment passed by Congress was adopted that banned Medicaid funding for abortions unless it was a case of rape or incest. This severely restricted poor Americans' access to abortions, and it still remains a problem today. Perhaps most shocking was the murder of Dr. David Gunn and 4 other doctors, Bernard Sleprin, John Britton, and George Tiller. Gunn was murdered March 10, 1993, by Michael F. Griffin, a diehard anti-abortionist. In reaction to the bloodshed, Congress passed FACE, or Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, which forbids the use of force, threat of force, or physical obstruction to any abortion clinic entrance. However, as any Bostonian can tell you, protesters still verbally harass women and men who seek aid and help at the Planned Parenthood or similar clinics. Controversy grew when George Bush signed a federal ban on abortion procedures in 2003. This, of course, was immediately struck down by the National Abortion Federation, but the fact it still passed through Congress speaks for itself. In more recent times, abortion rights have become limited based on where you live. In southern conservative states, abortions, though still technically available, are consistently under fire from politicians. For example, after the Planned Parenthood v. Casey case, it became mandatory in Florida for girls to retain parental involvement, endure mandatory bias counseling, and complete required waiting periods. Such limitations are unconstitutional in my opinion, but societal influences are often stronger than federal interference. Fortunately, just this April, Obama signed a bill that lowered over-the-counter access to Plan B emergency contraceptive pill to 15, which will prevent unwanted pregnancies and abortions. This, of course, was met with the usual opposition and controversy by those too ignorant to grasp its real scientific meaning. It is not a form of abortion, but instead it prevents conception, which makes all parties happy, but some are just too blind to see the light. In the most recent election, Mitt Romney and other Republicans, such as Paul Ryan, openly denounced abortions and used it as a campaign crusade to gain support. This appalling opposition grew dramatically absurd when on March 7, 2013, Arkansas legislature overturned the governor's veto and signed the fetal heartbeat abortion bill banning abortion after 12 weeks. This, of course, violates federal law and was struck down, but supporters seem confident it will pass once repealed despite the fact it has no scientific founding. Unfortunately, this is only a small taste of the opposition Roe v. Wade has met, and even worse is the issue is nowhere near being resolved. This controversy will carry on to generations to come and may even spark a revolution. As America becomes more and more polarized between liberals and conservatives, it is only a matter of time before it all erupts and once again equality and justice for all causes bloodshed and heartbreak. And this, in conclusion, is why Roe v. Wade is one of the greatest controversies the United States of America has ever experienced.